بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نواصل في درسنا. We're going to continue in fiqh al-nawazil, an academic course studying contemporary issues. Today's topic is al-mutajara fil ashum, to invest or to buy shares in the stock market or in shares in general. So we're going to take that discussion. This discussion has some length to it, but we're going to try to summarize as much as possible. So with no further delay, we ask the brother to begin reading from the hand of Shaykh. Jazakumullah khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Discussion number 10 from the topics of modern day nawazil. Topic: investing in stocks and shares. The term stock market refers to several exchanges in which shares of publicly held companies are bought and sold. A stock is a type of investment that represents an ownership share in a company. Investors buy stocks that they think will go up in value over time. Companies sell shares typically to gain additional money to grow the company. Concerning its Islamic ruling, the contemporary jurists and modern-day fiqh councils have issued a number of verdicts regarding it. Number 1. The Islamic Fiqh Council of the Muslim World League, المجمع الفقهي التابع لرابطة العالم الإسلامي, issued the following resolution. Being origin concerning transactions is that they are permissible. Establishing a share-based company that the line of work is halal-based is something that is permissible. There is no difference of opinion concerning the prohibition on holding shares in companies whose motives are haram, such as to deal in riba, or manufacturing or trading in haram things. It is not permissible for a Muslim to buy shares in companies or banks if some of their transactions involve dealing in riba or manufacturing or trading in haram things. If an individual purchases
So let's give an overview, inshallah. With the ashum, the shares, and buying stocks and investing in the stock market, it has 4 different ways that the scholars have categorized it. The first is that if the line of work of that company is halal, there is no other factor of why it would be impermissible, and the line of work is halal, such as an oil company, a building company, a medical company, then they say there's no khilaf fi jawaziha, it's permissible. That's the first type. Yani fi anshita mubaha, in work that it's halal based and there's no other factor such as riba or other reasons why it will make it haram. So it's clearly halal. It'll be like what they refer to as 100% Shariah compliant. Those scenarios they refer to that there's no khilaf between the scholars that it's permissible to invest in that. But a person may ask, is there really khilaf? Is there some sort of khilaf? I've seen that some online came out and said the whole stock market is haram, because they say it's contaminated. The halal with the haram, they're all, whether you're investing in the oil company or the riba company or a haram company, they said it is all one, it takes one ruling. That verdict in itself is not correct. That verdict in itself, in terms of the mainstream fatwa that's been passed by the scholars, is that just looking at a market as a whole and giving a vague ruling on all of what takes place in it with one ruling is not correct. And we know, like for example, the malls the physical stores that we have, maybe one plaza, various of things may occur therein of transactions. It doesn't render every store to be impermissible of trade and business. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would have transactions in the markets of the Jews and the markets of the people of the scripture and the pagans. And just the fact that their market are based on mostly haram doesn't render every transaction therein haram. So that is a point that we wanted to share, that investing in the stock market or buying shares and investing in them, if the line of work is permissible and there's nothing else that will render it as haram, there's no khilaf between the scholars that is permissible. That's the first type. The second type is what they call anshita muharrama, where the line of work of those companies are haram based. Maybe the company is selling, it's mainly to export products that are haram, such as alcohol or khinzir, or gambling companies, or insurance companies, or banks. They say that is muharrama bittifaq. That is impermissible by the consensus of the scholars. The third type of category, how the scholars categorize these shares, is companies that have a realm, an element of haram in it, and an element of halal in it. So it's anshita mukhtalita. Companies that have a mixture of both halal products and haram products. And it may be one part of it, or it is into gambling, or selling products that are haram and other products are halal. What would be the ruling for you to invest in such a company? And what is, after it being a ruling of it being haram or halal, what should you do if you're in such a predicament? That is what we're going to speak about. The last type of category, that some of the scholars have categorized these shares, is companies that the line of work is halal, anshita mubaha, but the tasarrufat of the administration, how the admin of that company finances its companies, is probably haram based. So the line of work is halal, but how they fund themselves and finance themselves is haram. This is a separate category on its own, where a lot of verdicts have been shared, and we're going to take that with these verdicts, inshallah. First, we're starting with Al-Majma' al-Fiqhi bi-Rabitat al-Alam, which they translate in English, the Muslim World League, and initially was introduced by one of the previous muftis of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Sheikh. He founded this majma', and it was initially scholars from Saudi Arabia. Then approximately it began to expand, where 13 other countries across the globe of its scholars began to join, and so on and so forth. Then after that, I believe Sheikh bin Baz became president, until it reached the level where we are now. The current president is the Mufti, Sheikh Abdul al-Sheikh, but he's not much involved, and due to his health. So right now the Amin al-Am, they call it the trustee, who's ahead of it, who that there is a very controversial character who gave a khutbah in Arafah recently of this past year. They call him Dr. Muhammad Isa. He's mainly the one right now representing this council. And there's a lot of controversy regarding him and some of his statements. But this is as this Fiqh Council stands as now. These are old verdicts that were passed, really old, and I believe in the year 1992, if I'm correct, or even earlier, 1985. There's another verdict of 1992. But this is the first verdict that was passed regarding shares or the stock market in general. So we'll continue reading, inshallah.
If an individual purchases shares unknowingly that the company deals in riba, then he happens to find out, then he must get out of it. The prohibition in this case is clear because of the general meaning of the evidence in the Quran and Sunnah concerning the prohibition on riba, and because buying shares in companies that deal with riba while the purchaser is aware of it means that the purchaser himself is a partner in dealing in riba, because the share represents part of the company's capital, and the shareholder has a share in the company's activities and possessions. So if the company...
So this is a question. When you're investing in the stock market, what is your role in it? Are you a partner of that company? That you take a ruling of partnership? Or you're a mere customer that happens to buy something from there and using their platform to purchase and to sell? What is your role? This is the question initially that scholars, when they were in these fiqh councils, they presented their discussion on, and certain financial advisors and people of experience, of expertise, they presented their view that you're actually a partner when you're investing into these companies. The fact that you're buying a share is as you become a shareholder to that company, and you take a ruling of a partner. So then they said, if you're a partner and this company is doing something haram, then you will be doing ta'awun ala ism al-udwan. You're cooperating on sin and transgression. Hold on.
So if the company lends any money with interest or borrows with interest, the shareholder has a share of that, because those who deal with lending and borrowing on the basis of interest are doing that on his behalf and acting as his representative, and delegating someone else to do a haram action is not permissible. End of quote. 14th session in 1415 Hijri, corresponding to 1985. Translation excerpted and edited.
Did you read the beginning part of the term stock market? Okay, read it, no? Okay, so we have a general overview of how the stock market works and how it is nowadays. Nowadays it's portfolios. You'll have like a portfolio manager who perhaps does most of the investment. You just provide the capital and maybe let him know what type of investments you want to do and what you're looking for and what do you expect. And sometimes it's private based, sometimes it's public. So there's different avenues. All of this takes the same ruling that we're mentioning with these verdicts, inshallah. We'll try to summarize at the end. Hold on.
Number 2, the Fatwa Department of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, دائرة الإفتاء في المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية, issued the following statement. During its second session held on the above date, the board reviewed the letter number 611 55122/1352, date the 22nd of November 2018, sent from His Excellency Chairman of the Shariah Consultative Committee in charge of drawing up the Shariah and accounting standards for the classification of companies according to their compliance with the rules of Shariah. The letter was addressed to the Secretary General of the IFTA.
So, this committee, they stand as a representative for Majma' al-Fiqh al-Dawli, the International Fiqh Academy. A lot of people nowadays, when they're looking for fatwa online, they come across their website. The Jordanian Fatwa Committee. It's like second in line after Islam Q&A in terms of the most popular English fatwa online platform. So a lot of people, they get their fatwas from them. So we just wanted to, out of transparency, mention their opinion and then share the khulasat. Hold on.
The letter was addressed to the Secretary General of the IFTA Department, Dr. Ahmed Al-Hassanat, and it reads as follows. I would like to bring to your kind attention the fact that the Amman Stock Exchange has formed a Sharia Consultative Committee to draw up the Sharia and accounting standards for the classification of companies, according to their compliance with the rules of Sharia. The committee includes a number of experts in various fields of Islamic financing, from both technical and Sharia perspectives. Having reviewed the resolutions of the IFTA Board, fatwas of the IFTA departments, resolution of the the International Islamic Fiqh Academy, AAOIFI Sharia Standards number 21 about stock exchange, shares and bonds, resolutions of the Sharia Supervisory Councils, Dow Jones Islamic Market Index, former international experiences, in addition to several research papers and studies in this field. The committee has drawn up a draft of the above standards, subjected them to arbitration, commented on them, and set up Sharia and accounting regulations for them. In light of this, we would like to stress the significance of this project and its impact on strengthening and developing the Islamic economy. This is in addition to assisting investors who have the inclination to invest in companies whose businesses comply with the principles of the tolerant Islamic Sharia, and this eventually will lead to strengthening and supporting the national economy. We would like you to discuss the above draft with the IFTA board to deliver the ruling of Sharia on it. After deliberating the above issue, the board decided adopting the following Sharia standards. First, there is no harm in dealing with the shares of companies whose declared transactions and financial statements are free of the agreed upon unlawful practices. Second, it is prohibited to trade in the shares of companies whose core business is definitely prohibited. Third, companies and their boards are prohibited to deal in usury, even if the latter was a small percentage. Fourth, as for companies with mixed transactions, lawful and unlawful, the source of their business is lawful, but they accidentally dealt in some unlawful contracts or sold unlawful items, although these aren't their basic activities nor stipulated in their registered articles of association. This mixed type must meet two conditions in order for trading in their shares to become permissible. Number one, the borrowed or deposited amounts involving usury mustn't exceed 25% of the overall value of the company's shares. Number two,
and some of them say 30%. We're going to see that. Some say 25%, and some say 30%. Go ahead.
Number two, revenues and expenditures resulting from that incidental unlawful transaction, as defined earlier, mustn't exceed 5% from the company's overall revenues. The evidence for these two conditions rests on the flexible rules of Islamic jurisprudence. For example, pardoning the little necessity must only be assessed and answered proportionally, and a general need takes the ruling of a necessity. This is in addition to the rule.
They take these principles from some of the transactions, like in the transactions of the Prophet ﷺ during his time. There's no transaction except that they said there's going to be some level of ambiguity, and it's going to have some sort of jahala. And that jahala, they said, is overlooked. So a small percentage of these things that we will render as impermissible, of gharar or jahala, of uncertainties in transactions, they're overlooked. They're saying the same with these elements of having a small percentage of haram. But they say the ruling applies for the majority. ALHAQQ للغالب. And they say النادر لا حكم له. That which is rare or small or minute, it has no position. So this is what some of the verdicts that they're using. Hold on.
This is in addition to the rule which states that the one who undertakes the prohibited action is the one liable for it, while others are free from that liability. This particularly applies to modern companies shared by thousands of individuals.
And so they're saying that the hukum applies to the mubashir. The ruling mainly falls onto the one that is directly involved in taking that riba to finance the company, not on everyone else who's part of that company. So there was a verdict that we translated on Toronto Da'wah by Sheikh Mubbil. Initially, it was about partnership. Two brothers established a partnership to build a house. However, one of them took a loan from the bank while his companion was unaware, and he didn't inform his partner about it up until they completed the building. So what is upon his partner who didn't know about the loan from the bank until after? Is he sinful? The Shaykh answers, I hope that there's no sin upon him, since he didn't know, firstly. Then he says, secondly, due to the fact that the sin is only upon the person who is directly involved in the riba act. And he says, Wallahu musta'an, and Allah is Zaydisat. And then he says, as for someone who has been trialed with this type of partnership, while he's not directly involved in the riba act, then the sin is only upon the person who's directly involved. Then he says, however, from the angle of wara, caution, he should leave off such a partnership only from the angle of wara, caution. And they say, oh my fellow brothers, there's a difference between wara, caution, and prohibition. So, and some of the scholars, they see that the companies of the administrations, how they plan to finance themselves and take certain loans, the sin applies directly onto those who are involved, not every shareholder or everyone under that company. And we're going to give other examples, like a person who's working in a company where that company happens to take riba-based loans. What is the ruling on your work in there? Even though you're not directly involved, you're just in a certain section or an area or department that doesn't directly deal with that riba. We'll speak about that, inshallah. Give us for the interruptions, but bismillah.
Therefore, it is hard for each shareholder to realize in detail the incidental transactions of that company. It is the duty of every Muslim, despite the conditional permissibility of the above ruling, to get rid of the unlawful percentage of his profits and to spend it on public interest. This is provided that no benefit is earned from the latter whatsoever, and Allah the Almighty knows best. End of quote.
And so, with these conditions, as some of them have added, that if you come to know that there is a percentage of riba that is generated in these companies, then you should purify a percentage of your wealth accordingly, just to come out clean from investing in such a company. And this is from the use of proofs that the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya ma'ashar al-shabab, inna hadha al-bay' yahduruhu al-laghwu wal-halif fashubuhu bi-sadaqa. The Prophet ﷺ said, oh businessmen, this transaction of yours, it comes with all sorts of things that are contaminated, of idle speech and false oaths. So purify it or mix it with sadaqah. So this is where they took from it. They said, if this is regarding regular worldly transactions, they said with greater preference, if you're investing in a company or a market that has some percentage or elements of haram or riba, then it's more deserving for you to purify your wealth. This is what they say, to take a percentage and to purify your wealth, or to give sadaqah as a way to cleanse yourself from any wrong dealings that you had. Hold on.
The Accounting and Audit Organization for Islamic Financial Institution, AAOIFI, stated, the fundamental rule is that of prohibition of acquiring shares of transactions.
And this company, this Islamic institution, is the one that certifies most of the Islamic banks across the globe, and even Islamic housing. And any Islamic market that is referred as Shariah compliant, they usually go through them. They're the ones that usually certify if they're Shariah compliant. So they have some conditions, and they have a PDF called Shariah Standards, Al-Ma'ayir Al-Shar'iyya, and the likes of Sheikh Salih Al-Luhaydan went over some of their works. So we're going to read what they have to say. Hold on.
The fundamental rule is that of prohibition of acquiring shares of transactions, investments, and trading in the shares of corporation transactions that sometimes undertake transactions in riba and other prohibited things even when their primary activity is permissible. But from this rule, subscription and transactions, investments, or trading are exempted with the following conditions. Number 1, that the corporation does not state in the memorandum of association that one of its objectives is to deal with in interest or in prohibited goods or materials like pork, swine, and the like. Number 2, that the collective amount raised as loan or interest...
They put that condition, like the foundations of this business is not built upon haram. And it's a side factor, outside factor. The asas, the asal is bunya ala halal, they're saying. It's just subsidiary issues that are going to be mentioned. Follow?
Number 2, that the collective amount raised as loan or on interest, whether long-term or short-term debt, does not exceed 30% of market capitalization of the corporation, knowingly that raising loans on interest is prohibited whatsoever the amount is.
طيب, how do you come to know if it's 30%? There's now Islamic portfolios or Shariah compliant websites that help you and come in to know this. طيب. No. If طيب, continuing with, before we got distracted and lost forgive me, brothers, trying to gain the thought, the focus. إذا بني على حرام, if it's built, its foundations upon haram, طيب, we were at, where do you identify the 30%? The 30%, most portfolios now, Islamic portfolios, they decide for you that this is under the 30% guideline. So that's why you would go to them if you're going to follow these conditions. And sometimes you can do your own research to look it up. Hold on.
Number 3, that the total amount of interest taking deposits, whether short, medium, or long term, shall not exceed 30% of the market capitalization of total equity, knowingly that interest taking deposits are prohibited whatsoever the collective amount is. Number 4, that the amount of income generated from prohibited component does not exceed 5% of the corporation, irrespective of the income being generated by undertaking a prohibited activity, by ownership of a prohibited asset, or in some other way. If a source of income is not properly disclosed, then more effort is to be exerted for identification, therefore giving due care and caution in this respect.
Is this an opinion that some of our contemporary scholars hold, of renowned scholars? Sheikh bin Baz, he has a verdict where he says, when he was asked about working in a sharika, in a company, that it has some type of ta'amul with bunuk al-ribawiyya. They have dealings and transactions that are riba based with banks. So he says what is apparent is not impermissible because al-muharram fiha qalilun binisba ila ma yatiha min musahamat. He said the haram element in it is small in percentage in comparison to the rest of the shares it has. وما يحصل لها من المساعدات لكن إذا تورع الإنسان وترك وعمل في شركة أخرى لا تعمل هذا العمل أو في عمل آخر يكون بعيدا عن الربا وعن الحرام يكون أحوط مثل ما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. So in terms of permissibility, it seems to be permissible if the percentage of the riba therein, of the dealings with the banks, is very small in comparison to the rest of the shares of that company. But if a person were to leave it off out of caution and look for another company free from any type of riba, then that is more cautious, he says. And like the statement of Allah Prophet, leave off what you're doubtful for, what you don't doubtful for. So that's the advice of Sheikh Baz. Move on, inshallah. We'll give other verdicts already.
Dar al-Ifta al-Misriya issued the following statement. The stock exchange is only a market for trading securities and commercial transactions. Based on the above, it is permissible to deal in the stock market by purchasing or selling shares in companies which engage in lawful activities. This must be with a view to participating in trade or industry. However, if it is for the purpose of speculation, then it is not considered unlawful. Then it is considered unlawful. End of quote.
And if you enter the stock market from an angle of you're not really investment, but more of as a gambling and just speculating, then they see it to be impermissible. But if it's more like investment and you see that it has its substantial causes why this value will go up and this will go down, then here it's permissible. Go ahead.
The Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, stated the following. Trading in stocks, i.e. selling, buying, investing, or speculating, is a permissible matter, as all other permissible trades. Indeed, the Most High said, Allah has permitted trading and forbidden usury, riba. However, the permissibility of trading in the stock market is stipulated upon certain conditions, of which we will mention the most important, as follows. To avoid investing in impermissible shares, these are companies in which their main activities are in unlawful industries such as usury, winemaking, insurance, entertainment, gambling, and others, that which the Shariah prohibited from dealing in it, profiting from it, or benefiting from its value. Number 2, that the investment contract be free from all nullifying factors, such as ambiguity, impermissible monopolization, or any cheating thereof.
Bear in mind, when these ashum first came out, there were some scholars who took the opinion that it's totally haram. Because they say investing in these companies as shares has no haqiqah, there's no reality. There's only papers which don't have any real value, they say, for which they can be sold or purchased. This is what they were saying. They said it's not really like purchasing products and selling it and trading it. And later on, after scholars came to see that there is some sort of value and you are a shareholder in a real company and it's not imagination, a lot of them began to recant. Hold on.
As for companies that trade in permissible commodities but deal with interest, riba, whether in lending or borrowing, then it is upon whomever deals with it to take out from the profits he receives an amount proportional to the interest, so as to purify the rest of the money. And it is essential that he exerts all efforts to choose the companies which do not deal with banks in such interest-based transactions if they are available.
And how do you determine what you should give in charity to purify your wealth on that opinion? Some say you look to how much they earn out of interest yearly. And then you give that percentage of your wealth, of your earnings yearly in sadaqah. And Shaykh Muhammad Salih Uthman says that for a company that like maybe half of it is haram and half of it is halal, then you give half of your wealth in sadaqah. That's what he mentioned in one of his verdicts. So this is like how to determine. These are some of the verdicts that were shared. Hold on.
As for the outstanding stock options in global markets, whether they are call options or put options, then they are from the ambiguous contracts forbidden by Shariah. And the Islamic Assembly published a decision upon that in Jeddah, year 1992, number 63. And this is because it doesn't allow for the profit of both parties, but the profit of one is a definite loss for the other, no doubt. Therefore, these options are venture tools for prices. These are amongst the contracts which made the French economist Maurice Elias describe the global stock markets as huge actual casinos. And this is because of the nature of gambling is for one party to profit at the expense of the other. And this is exactly what happens in stock options in the stock option contracts in the global markets. May Allah increase you in cautiousness and success, and may He protect us and you from the temptations which is apparent and what is hidden thereof. And Allah, the Most High, knows best. End of quote.
Tayyib, so there are some different types of shares or stocks. There's ashum al-mumtaza. I think they call them like premium shares. A group of the scholars are against those type of shares. Like firstly, they say the investment in stocks should be in common stocks, not in preferred stocks, since preference shares do not entail the concept of both gain and loss. Rather, they guarantee a fixed benefit and are not subject to the flow of the general market. So there are some that preserve your capital, and your capital is guaranteed. Just the profit it is exposed to gain and loss. Not your capital. Your capital is secured. Those shares that you end up getting a membership for or an offer for, those ones are not allowed. They said any type of portfolio that you enter and the portfolio manager tells you, don't worry, in any circumstance, your capital is secured. And that's not allowed. We've seen a lot of brothers, they went into that, and he tells you, he says, I made a lot of money. You just go through this website, you put this amount, and the only thing that is exposed to gain and loss is your profit, not your capital, secured. So this becomes a loan with benefit. And it becomes كُلُّ قَرْضٍ جَرَّ نَفْعًا فَهُوَ riba. Every loan that entails a benefit, if it's secured, then it's riba. But if it's a real investment, your capital can't be secured. It has to be exposed to both gain and loss. So there should be an exposure where you come out with nothing. Or something, something small from, there's a decrease. Not the only thing that was decreased was just the fees from dealing with this portfolio manager. Everything else is secured for you. That is not allowed. So we warn the brothers from that type of one. Even though nowadays there comes out, some people say there's a difference between investment loans and consumer loans. Scholars, the Majma' al-Fiqh say there's no such thing. They said there's no such thing of the difference between a consumer loan and an investment loan. All of that, any loan that is given with the meaning of profit and is secured for you, then that is riba, the scholars have mentioned. Hold on.
The International Islamic Fiqh Academy, Al-Majma' al-Fiqhi ad-Duwali, stated the following. The Council of the International Islamic Fiqh Academy of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, holding its 7th session in Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, on the 7th to the 12th of Dhul Qa'dah 1412 Hijri, corresponding to the 9th to the 14th of May 1992. Having examined the research papers submitted to the Academy concerning financial markets, shares, options, commodities, credit cards, having listened to the discussions on the subject, resolves. First, shares. Number 1, acquisition of shares in companies. A. Since lawfulness is the primary judgment regarding transactions, creating a joint stock company with permissible purposes and illicit activities is also lawful. B. There is no legal disagreement on the prohibition of participating in companies whose main purpose is haram, such as engaging in riba-based transactions, forbidden products, and trading them. C. Prohibition is the primary judgment regarding participation in joint stock companies that may sometimes engage in prohibited transactions, such as riba-based transactions, even though their main activity may be lawful under Shariah. End of quote.
Yeah, so that's their verdict. There are some fiqh councils that see even though the company that engages in halal trade, sells halal products and offers halal services, however, their business operates or is financed through riba-based loans. A group of the fiqh councils, some see that it's impermissible. The difference of opinion between contemporary jurists. Some say the safest stance is to avoid. I'll read the verdict of Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili. He says, as for work of like a company, the line of work is halal except that the administration accepts haram financing. This financing is not present in its original structure system. However, the administration takes a usurious loan. The stocks in this company is a mixed type. So he says what is best is to leave it off and avoid it. That is the conclusion in regards to that which is associated with this matter. So this is what he gave. We translated as well on the website to our da'wah. There was a verdict of Sheikh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen where he was asked about working in a company. And the reason why this relates to our topic, working in a company that deals with riba. And they deal with the banks, even though they're providing a halal service, halal products, but they may finance themselves through the banks. So he says يجوز العمل في الشركات عموما إذا كان العمل الشخص منفصلا عن المعاملات الربوية فلا يكتب العقود الربوية ولا يشهد عليها. He said it's permissible to work into companies generally if the person's work is separated from the riba-based transactions, where he doesn't audit or contract these riba-based contracts, and nor does he witness them. So it shows you there's some sort of separation, and it's more about the person who's directly involved. And this is what is apparent, that if the percentages that some of them have mentioned, under 30%, and the main structure and the system of that work is not based upon riba, but they happen to finance themselves, like the asl of the company was not built upon it, then it doesn't affect every shareholder. It doesn't affect every partnership there in that company. So it's allowed for a person to invest in those companies. Yes, a person may say, out of what the scholars have mentioned, it's better to leave it off and to avoid it. Just the fact that كيف وقد قيل, as the Prophet said, how is it? It's the fact that there's some sort of elements of riba. But speaking in terms of reality, to find a company in this modern day and age that doesn't finance itself with riba or the likes of that, or has any involvement with riba, it's almost non-existent, especially in the Western economy. It's become somewhat overwhelming that people are dealing with these loans and dealing with the banks and companies that own large amount of assets. They at times are forced to engage into these transactions. طيب, now we generally have an overview. We wanted to speak about some other investments in these companies. Like some of them, they have conventional bonds, leverage-based loans that they offer with these shares, or short-selling transactions. A group of the scholars with the fiqh, they mentioned that those are not permissible, because those are more as loans. Any type of investment of stocks that you are taking as a loan, or given a loan, then those will not be permissible. Those will not be permissible. And also it has to be owned. The stocks and shares have to be owned by you for you to do, because you can't sell what you do not own. لا تبيع ما ليس عندك. What about dividends? Dividends that are provided. It is permissible to benefit from various of incentives that a company may offer its shareholders as long as the following conditions are met. The dividends are from the actual earnings of the company and not from earnings of interest. That's number one, they say. Number two, the dividends are from companies that do not conflict with Islamic laws of trade. So initially, if you're allowed to buy shares from that company, you're also allowed to benefit from the dividends that are given. Also, it has to be received by shareholders, not from investment that are being made in bonds or investment certificates, because they are in reality riba-based loans. So if a person asks you a question, I got to ask this question, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Dividends, after researching it, this is what they mention, that it has to be initially in companies that you're allowed to invest in. And secondly, it can't be from interest earnings or bonds or these type of loans. It has to be from actual earnings of the company. And that type of incentive is allowed to take and to benefit from. This is how they generate more shareholders and more funds, and to attract people to investing in their company. I believe this is it in a nutshell. That we know sharikat or companies that have lawful service and lawful products, and there's no other element of haram, it's permissible to invest in them. Sharikats or companies that provide haram services or unlawful products, it's not permissible to invest in them. But those that have some elements of haram, some of them say it has to be under 5%. And it can't be more than 5%. They say that which is minute is overlooked. They say there's no company except they have some sort of element of haram in it. So this has been mentioned. As for the riba, the financing, they say their yearly earnings cannot be more than, some say 25%, some say 30%. And these are the standard verdicts, and those are what we mentioned. And also we have shared a fatwa of Sheikh Abdul on a similar topic of this, what it entails that the riba of that loans is more on the person directly, the administrators, and not the shareholders or the people working in that company. With this we end, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. And also just to remind that this is the last of these fiqh nawazil sessions. We ended on 10 as 10 sessions to complete this academic course and studying the main topics that come around and are asked about. And there's a lot that are more decided to be covered, but this is just a summary and overview. And we apologize for any shortcomings in our research. Whatever we were correct in is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever we erred is from ourselves and from the shaitan. Allahu Rasulu Bari'an. And next week we're going to be starting a new kitab on the signs of the hour by Imam Sadiq Hassan Khan. We thought it's relevant for the day and age that we live in to go over that, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khairan.